Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? Hope you're all well. Now, before we kick off with this webinar session, if anybody's having any sort of technical challenges in viewing this session at all, what I highly recommend is to go through the usual kind of troubleshooting that we all tend to go through if technology doesn't work for us first time around. So feel free to hit the refresh button if you're tuning in via a web browser, or alternatively, if you're tuning in on a mobile device, feel free to come out of the YouTube app and then click back on the link that you received for this session. And then hopefully everything should be working for you. One thing to note is that with this webinar session, that captioning is available, so live captioning. So if you did want to toggle that on, if you hover over onto this YouTube video and find the icon with the letters CC inside of a small box, that is the button for you to turn live captioning on or off throughout the course of this session. And also be sure to grab yourself a pen and paper, just so you can kind of jot down notes as we go along. Okay, so I hope everyone's geared up for this session. So welcome to this Google Digital Garage webinar session, all about how you can build engaging presentations, which is delivered today in partnership with Media Trust. My name is Rikesh. I'm going to be your webinar presenter taking through the course of this session, which is going to last for approximately 60 minutes. So I'll kick off with a little bit about me. So I'm a trainer for Google's digital skills program, Google Digital Garage. As well as that, I'm also a digital marketer. So I work with businesses to help them to create and to grow an online presence in order to help them to kind of attract more customers and clients to their business offering. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And when it comes to kind of presentations, for me, I was never a natural public speaker or presenter. For me, when I used to kind of go to networking events, when I first started going to them, I was kind of a little bit kind of apprehensive and anxious going to those events, kind of going into a room and kind of speak to people that you don't know about. And when it comes to kind of presentations, it's all about kind of developing your skill, whether you are talking to donors, whether you're talking to beneficiaries, whether you're talking to just individuals who are interested in what you've got to say and what your organization kind of provides. It's important to present yourself in a manner that kind of represents who you are in general. And that's what we're going to be discussing about in this session, because I'm sure we all have different experiences of presenting, even things like kind of at school when we're kind of presenting things like coursework. We all have kind of various different experiences that we kind of go through with presenting and kind of public speaking in general as well. So that's kind of a little bit about me. I'd also like to introduce to you at this stage my colleague and fellow Google Digital Garage trainer, and that is the wonderful Samantha. Now, Samantha is going to be our chat moderator. So you might have noticed that on the right-hand side of your YouTube screen that there's a live chat box. That is your space over the course of this next hour to drop in any questions that you might have, and also drop in answers to kind of questions that you'll see on screen. So there will be some questions that kind of popping up on screen. So let me know your thoughts on them, and I'd love to kind of read out as many kind of questions and comments that do come through. And also Samantha will be kind of picking up on the same as well. And Samantha will also be dropping in useful links into the live chat. So kind of be sure to kind of always be kind of casting an eye on the live chat as we go along as well. I know some of you have been getting involved, kind of letting myself and Samantha know where you're tuning in from today. So Winchester Action on the climate crisis. They are tuning in from Winchester in the UK. We've got Richmond CVS. So morning to you as well. We've got Jenny tuning in from a sunny-ish Reading. Yeah, fantastic. So that's kind of great to see. It's kind of sunny where I am in the UK as well. So so thanks very much for kind of getting involved. So feel free to kind of be sure to kind of sign into your YouTube account, which is very quick to do. And once you've signed into a YouTube account, you can then type away into the live chat box itself. Now, as I mentioned at the top of this webinar session, we are excited to be delivering this webinar in partnership with Media Trust today, and we welcome all the guests that they've invited to join this Google Digital Garage training. I'll now read out a short introduction on behalf of Media Trust before we start. So Media Trust believes that it's by giving everyone a voice that we'll get to a more equal society. That's why they are proud to be working with thousands of charities to strengthen their storytelling, advocacy, and campaigning, press engagement, and social media. They do this through media, communications, and digital skills training delivered in partnership with their media and creative industry partners, and by matching media industry volunteers with charities looking for communication support. They would like to say a huge thanks to Google Digital Garage for delivering this masterclass in partnership with Media Trust as part of our digital communications training program supported by google.org. This training will be on the Resource Hub for the next 6 months. So feel free to come back and rewatch or share with friends. And I'm sure that Samantha will drop a link for the Resource Hub into the chat now for you. And don't miss out on future training opportunities by signing up for Media Trust's newsletter, which is at mediatrust.org/newsletter. So I hope all of that information is going to be kind of useful for you, especially with the ability on the Resource Hub to kind of look back on these training sessions and kind of rewatch what we're kind of going over today, and some of the other training sessions that we have ran over kind of the last few weeks or so on a variety of other topics. Now, this session on building engaging presentations is one of many webinars that we run as part of a wider Google Digital Garage webinar offering, and you'll find out kind of more information about the Google Digital Garage on the Google Digital Garage website. A link should be in the live chat below, in the video description for you down below. That's why I'm pointing down there. So feel free to kind of check out the link. Sign up for other webinars on a variety of other topics that might be useful for you and or your organization. And also you can sign up for online courses, which are available at no charge. And they aim to kind of supplement the learning that you do on some of these webinar sessions as well. There is a course on there called the Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course, which is a course that is actually a course that gives you a certificate at no charge from Google, recognizing that you've completed that course as well. So definitely check out all of those resources when you get a moment. But let's have a look at what we're covering in this session, all about how you can build engaging presentations. So in this session, we're going to be taking kind of a 1, 2, 3 approach, as you can see here. So first of all, we're going to be kind of, as you can see here, crafting our approach to presentations. So this is what I like to kind of call the preparation stage. So before we do anything, let's prepare for it, right? If we're going to be spending quality time, creating presentation, we want to kind of learn, well, why are we creating? What is our objective? What's our kind of goals that we're looking to achieve out of it as well? So we're going to be going through that preparation stage. Once we've done that, we've kind of we kind of have that focal point in terms of why we are creating presentation, what we are creating it about. We then progress on to creating it as well. So this is where we kind of go into the design phase to create a presentation which is both effective and engaging for our audience who we want to kind of consume our presentation, whether in person or virtually as well. And then we'll wrap up this session looking at kind of essential presentation skills. Some of these presentation skills you might already be using or might have developed yourself over a period of time. Some of these presentation skills you might want to kind of jot down and implement the next time you're either up on stage in front of a donor or beneficiary, or whether you are kind of talking to a webcam on a video call perhaps as well. Now, before we kind of get into the first part of this session on kind of preparation, I want to draw your attention to this fantastic resource that you can see on screen. So you can see here, the title says free career certificates available from Google. So these are flexible online training programs that are provided by Google in high growth and high demand career paths and sectors, such as data analytics, project management, user experience design, as well as IT support, and also digital marketing, e-commerce as well. Now, for those of you who are based in the UK, you can find out more information using the link here on screen. I'm sure that Samantha will kindly drop a link into the chat for you as well. And with these online courses, upon completion, as the title suggests, you will receive a Google Career Certificate at no charge. And the way that these courses work is that it works via a free scholarship, as Google have partnered with selected partners across the UK in order to ensure that these online courses are provided at no charge for you as well. And it's a great way to kind of develop your job ready skills, or if you're looking to kind of move and kind of pivot into a new sector, it's a fantastic kind of opportunity to kind of learn in your own time and at your own pace using these online courses going forward. So definitely kind of check that out. So let's kind of kick off with this preparation stage here now. And I want to kind of ask you a question first up when we're talking about presentation, which is, what's the most memorable presentation that you've experienced? So I want you just to kind of take a moment, recollect this, and I want you to kind of, if possible, let me know a memorable presentation that you've experienced in the live chat. So let me know something that kind of springs to your mind. This could be either in person, so a presentation that you've kind of sat through yourself, or it could be something that you've maybe experienced online. And just give me kind of a flavor as well. Don't just tell me kind of why, or just don't just tell me what the presentation was. Just tell me why. Why did it kind of sit with you? Why was it memorable for you? Now, it could be memorable for the reason of it was something that really inspired you, or something that really kind of entertained you, or it could be memorable for the wrong reasons, i.e., it was maybe very calamitous and everything that could go wrong went wrong. Maybe the lights weren't working, or maybe the presentation just kind of went down in general, and just everything just didn't work, and that's what made it memorable. So let me know in the chat something that was memorable for you, something that really kind of captured your attention, something that maybe even sits with you today, and you always kind of think back, oh yeah, I remember watching this particular presentation either online on YouTube, or I sat through this. I remember going to an event, I sat through this fantastic presentation by someone. So let me know your thoughts in the live chat. And as you're kind of letting me know your thoughts in the live chat about your most memorable presentation that you've experienced, it's only fair if I kind of share some of mine. So something that always kind of jumps out to me in terms of a memorable presentation that I've experienced in person is when I was, I think, about 15, 16 years old. So for those in the UK, it was when I was doing my GCSEs. I was in science class, and my science teacher was fantastic. Now, the reason why I always say that my science teacher was fantastic, because what he did was, for someone like me who wasn't very sciencey minded, he was able to kind of provide analogies for a lot of the concepts and processes involved in kind of different scientific processes in general. So he was able to kind of ground concepts in the reality and in the world of his students. So I was in a class that was predominantly filled with individuals who either played sports for either just kind of casually or had an interest like myself, or they were good enough to kind of play for the school sports team or school football team, for example. I kind of fell into the earlier category where I wasn't good enough. I just enjoyed and had kind of a casual interest in sports. But the one thing that my science teacher did was he was aware of that factor, because he got to know the students. And what he did was, when he was talking through various processes like photosynthesis, for example, he would go through the process, give all kind of the clear labels about this element, this kind of part of the process works with this part, so that we were aware about some of the terminology that we'll kind of see on the exam paper. But what he also did was he actually also went back and actually ran that process through, but created an analogy, and kind of created I believe he kind of mentioned about kind of different positions on a football pitch. So kind of you've got your striker, you've got your goalkeeper, you've got your midfielder, and kind of correlated towards that. And that's something that actually helped me when I kind of sat there in the exam room doing the paper, and I got a question about photosynthesis. My mind went straight back to that class where he kind of gave that sort of analogy, and that was something that helped me to actually answer the question. So that was something very memorable to me as an in-person presentation. I still remember it to this day. Now, in terms of an online presentation, something that is very memorable is something that's very memorable was a TED Talk. I'm sure some of you are probably like nodding and agreeing, even though I can't see you all, but I'm sure you're probably kind of nodding and agreeing. You might kind of sat through TED Talk presentations either on the TED website or through YouTube. And there was one that really kind of stuck with me and still sticks with me today. And it's a talk by an American author called Simon Sinek, and it's called Start With Why. And that was something that really kind of stood out to me, because he kind of went through his concept, and he illustrated it simply by just having a flip chart and a marker pen. And he just helped kind of paint the picture of his concepts in the minds of his audience, and that's something that really resonates and stuck with me in general as well. So let's actually dig into the chat and actually kind of find some of your presentation that you found very kind of impactful. So we've got a few kind of coming in here. So comments here, we've got Winchester Action on climate crisis, saying something that looks slick, combined film, infographic, traditional slides. Yeah. So you've actually kind of mentioned a lot of kind of characteristics that really kind of grabbed your attention there as well. Ella's mentioned presenters spent most of the time reading their slides with the back to the audience was really bad. Yeah, so that was quite sort of memorable. I'm not a fan of those kind of presentations where you kind of sat through, you got a presenter talking through slides and they're literally either reading it word for word and they're just really not engaging. the audience, because maybe people are falling asleep, maybe people are on the phones, and it's something that really just doesn't captivate anybody at all. We've also got Penny, who's mentioned, one of my colleagues who worked in Korea. He just put photos and told stories. I still remember the photos and stories clearly. Serious and funny, less words, more pictures. Yeah, I think pictures can what's that phrase? Is it a picture paints 1,000 words, right? It's something like that. Because we are visual learners. And that's something that really kind of captures our attention there. So thank you for that, Penny, as well. Famida's mentioned when presentations have interesting and impactful short films or videos involved in there as well. Absolutely. Grace mentioned Scary Guy. Back when I was at school, taught us not to judge a book by its cover and to be kind to one another. Absolutely, yeah. And that's something which as you mentioned, kind of sticks with you to this day. And that's something that makes it memorable, right? Jenny's mentioned a bad presentation is just someone reading the slides. Why bother? Exactly, yeah. And that kind of comes on to what I'll speak about later on is kind of whatever we have. So even this session, you know, I've got slides right next to me here. That's just a visual aid. It's not necessarily the presentation. One thing to note is that you, as the presenter, are the presentation, and that's always a mindset to kind of keep in mind whenever you are kind of getting up on stage and kind of presenting or kind of discussing and kind of speaking to individuals in general as well. Right to Succeed as mentioned, presenter was really engaging. The slides were only there as a prompt. Yeah, absolutely, to highlight key message and concept. The speaker narrative and delivery of the presentation was the focus. Yeah, absolutely, that's what it's all about. And that's something that really kind of brings somebody in to the session, bring somebody into the presentation, kind of bring somebody in to the messaging that the presenter is trying to get across as well. Jenny's also mentioned, I found presentations delivered by DSC, so Directory of Social Change, to be really engaging. Lots of slides, quick moving, but without feeling rushed at the same time. Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of a fine balance. And we'll speak about pacing a little bit later on, because I think that's important as a presenter to be mindful of, because generally as a presenter, we're on the clock in terms of how long we've got to present for. So we want to make sure that we are getting our messaging across, but we don't want to do it in a rushed or kind of hurried kind of manner there as well. Rosemary mentioned presentations with engaging activities and interactivity. Absolutely, I think that's something which kind of even the people that aren't that very engaged, it kind of makes them think, oh, I've got to answer a question, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And that interactivity, that's something that can bring an audience member in as well. Jenny's also mentioned, who doesn't love a good TED Talk? Yeah, absolutely. I've spent probably countless hours watching various TED Talks on YouTube myself. Anne has mentioned certain presenters use long paragraphs and audience finds it pretty boring. No pictures included. Yeah, that's something which we'll speak about, and when we come on to the design phase as well. They don't know how to keep the audience engaged and focused throughout. Yeah, very, very important. And it's great for you all to kind of provide your thoughts and experiences, because we've all kind of had those various experiences, whether we are presenting and we try and catch ourselves in the moment, think, oh, we seem to be losing the audience here, or we've actually sat through those kind of presentations as we've kind of looked at kind of the contrast between memorable presentations for the right reasons and maybe kind of for the less so right reasons as well. So it's great, and thank you very much for all of those kind of comments in the chat. And it's great to kind of start off this session properly by kind of coming at it from all angles of our own experiences, because there's various reasons why we generally tend to present. So you can see here on screen, there's 3 reasons that we've got listed here why we tend to present. So we present to communicate a message. We present to persuade our audience, or, you know, if you think about it in the sales terms, persuade our potential customers to buy from it. Or it could be an instruction. That could be kind of a sales advert, for example, where you are instructing somebody to go ahead and buy your product, for example, or instructing a donor to go ahead and actually donate to a particular research project, for example, that you've got for your organization. Now, there's also other reasons why we generally tend to present, and that is to inspire our audience. And also we generally tend to sometimes present to entertain. So what I want you to do is I want you to kind of keep these in mind, keep kind of the key reasons why we tend to present in mind, because what I'm going to be showing you now is just a short 1-minute clip of a TED Talk presentation. We've already spoken about TED Talks before, and I want you just to kind of think about what's kind of the reason that this presenter is on stage. What are they trying to kind of kind of relay and kind of get across? What's kind of the reason that they are presenting? Is it to communicate a message? Is it to persuade? Is it to instruct? So just take a look at this 1 minute clip.
What you're doing right now at this very moment is killing you. More than cars or the internet, or even that little mobile device we keep talking about, the technology you're using the most almost every day is this, your tush. Nowadays, people are sitting 9.3 hours a day, which is more than we're sleeping at 7.7 hours. Sitting is so incredibly prevalent, we don't even question how much we're doing it. And because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't even occur to us that it's not okay. So instead of going to coffee meetings or fluorescent lit conference room meetings, I ask people to go on a walking meeting to the tune of 20 to 30 miles a week. It's changed my life. You'll be surprised at how fresh air drives fresh thinking, and in the way that you do, you'll bring into your life an entirely new set of ideas. Thank you.
Okay, so that was just a short 1 minute clip. The actual whole TED Talk presentation is just less than 4 minutes, I believe. I'm sure that Samantha will be able to kind of dig out and kind of send you the full link and pop that into the live chat for you if you wanted to watch the whole clip. But the reason why we selected that 1 minute clip was because that kind of sums up exactly what this presenter Nilofer was trying to get across in their short presentation. Now, as you were kind of consuming that video, that TED Talk presentation, what did you kind of think? Did you think that the presenter was trying to communicate a message? Were they trying to persuade us into other ways of kind of staying active in our day-to-day working life? Were they trying to instruct us? So next time we do have a meeting, make sure that we are not having it in a meeting room, and make sure that we're going for a walk instead. Now, if you said any of these, you'd be absolutely correct, because we don't necessarily just present for one sole reason, to communicate a message or to instruct or to persuade or entertain or inspire as well. A lot of the lines with the reasons why we tend to present tend to be blurred, and that's fine. But what we want to do at this kind of preparation stage is be aware of why we are presenting. I think it's very, very important. So Richmond CVS mentioned persuade. Yeah, I think persuade's kind of the nice kind of middle ground between kind of communicating and instructing. It's kind of the halfway house there, absolutely. And Catherine's mentioned, yeah, she was doing all those things, communicate, persuade, and instruct. Yeah, and you kind of saw it in a very kind of seamless and kind of blended manner in general as well. Richmond CVS mentioned, and the rest as well, absolutely. Yeah, persuade, communicate, and instruct as well. But one thing that you would have also picked up on, and something that generally good presenters tend to do, is that they don't just deliver a presentation, but what they do is that they tell a story. And storytelling is such a powerful tool, especially for us as humans. It brings us in to a presentation. It's the reason why probably many of us watch episode after episode after episode of a television program on a streaming service, because we're invested in the storyline. It's the reason that we go to the cinemas. We're interested in kind of a storyline. I know that I kind of watch kind of some of the Marvel superhero movies, and the reason why I kind of continue to watch all of them is because there's always kind of like a post-credit scene which kind of leads on to the next movie. And I like that kind of continuity, and that's something that draws me in as well. So the power of storytelling is very powerful as a tool for kind of capturing attention and engagement as well. And when it comes to kind of there's a general kind of misconception that I tend to find with a lot of people when they hear about kind of the phrase storytelling, is that you are either a born storyteller or not. And for me, that's not necessarily the case. I think storytelling can be learned. I mean, if you type in on YouTube how to be a good storyteller, you'll probably find a lot of different videos that will crop up and appear for you. And it's something with any kind of skills and kind of qualities we can develop, we can build upon them as well, and kind of practice them as much as possible. Now, when it comes to telling a story, there are generally kind of 4 basic story types that you can kind of see here on screen. There are more. However, these are kind of the 4 basic story types which are kind of based upon kind of the work of Christopher Booker in his book called The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories. And what Christopher Booker kind of identified, you've got kind of your origin type stories. So to kind of, I guess, quote kind of a Drake lyric, it's kind of your typical kind of started from the bottom, now we're here. So, you know, we kind of, as a charitable organization, we started with 2 members of staff running this kind of part-time, and now we have kind of 50 staff, and we cover kind of the wide range. We kind of cover the whole of the UK, providing support and care to our beneficiaries. That could be kind of your origin type story. You've then got kind of a future vision type story. So this is something where you see yourself, where you envisage yourself as an individual, where you envision yourself as an organization in so many years' time. What is kind of the end goal essentially for you as well? You then got kind of failure and success stories. So this is something used quite a lot and quite usefully by a lot of kind of industry leaders or kind of entrepreneurs. When they kind of share their story, they kind of talk about the humble beginnings, how they kind of had a lot of knockbacks and setbacks, and then look at them now. Look at them being kind of running a successful organization now as well. And then you've got kind of your realization type stories. So this is something which I like to kind of call the light bulb type story. So you're just doing something very innocuous, like you are cleaning out the attic or your loft over the weekend. And then while you're doing that, you have kind of that light bulb moment, a little bit like in cartoons. You get that light bulb that just appears above your head in the cartoon. And that's kind of you just getting a brain spark, think, oh, I want to set up a charitable organization helping these kind of individuals, or these kind of individuals perhaps as well. And that's something that we can talk about as well, a realization story. Something that was very kind of profound, that kind of just hit us and kind of drove us into a particular kind of direction as well. Now, when it comes to these story types, we want to make sure that we are molding these story types to whatever we have got to talk about and present in general. So if it's a budget report, if you're working kind of in the finance department of any organization, if it's a budget report, you don't need to go into the origins of an organization. You can kind of talk about failure and success. So in Q1, these were our profits. This was our revenue, and in Q3, this is now our percentage increase in terms of our profits, for example. So that's kind of talking about failure and success. If it's kind of an update or organization update, or an update in regards to kind of your charity, you can kind of talk about and you can talk about kind of the origin story, about the kind of the humble beginnings, especially if you've got kind of maybe new volunteers at the organization. You can kind of enlighten them to say, right, this is how we started, this is our message, this is our mission that we are looking to achieve as well. And then something like kind of idea pitches. If you're looking to kind of pitch something which is a new project, this is something which some of you might have kind of watched a television program called Dragon's Den, which is in the UK. I believe kind of the American equivalent is Shark Tank, where you've got a row of kind of entrepreneurs, kind of investors who will typically kind of sit there. You get people coming in, kind of pitching their ideas, seeking investment from them, and also kind of a helpful hand in kind of opening a few doors so that they can kind of get a bit more kind of mainstream and kind of get more notoriety as well. And for idea pitches, you generally talk about your future vision. Even as an organization, if you're creating a new charity or organization, you can kind of talk about where you see yourself, where's the end goal. So you can use a future vision story as well. Now, a few other things to kind of remember before we kind of go into the design phases. Think about a few questions that we want to kind of answer in this preparation stage for presentations. One of them is, what's our goal? What are we looking to achieve? So that TED Talk presenter for that clip that we saw, their main goal was to get people to consider walking, meeting, or generally different approaches when they are in their daily working life. Also, another question to kind of answer is, what do we want our audience to think? So as an audience member, we tend to kind of attend presentations to just generally absorb information. That's kind of our default stance. But as a presenter, we want to kind of be a bit more proactive and think, well, what kind of messaging can we kind of impress and imprint on our audience's kind of thinking in general as well? And some of that is actually linked to feeling and emotion. We are kind of emotional beings, so it's important to kind of take people on a journey at times. So if we're talking about a failure and success story for our organization, then we can kind of, when we're talking about kind of the setbacks and the failures that we've had, we can actually kind of, we're actually talking in a way which people feel kind of empathetic towards us. And they feel kind of the lows at that point. But then when we get to the highs, they feel the elation with us. They feel the happiness and joy that we are kind of projecting out when we're talking about it in our voice as well. We'll speak about voice as well later on. And also think about what's the one key thing that you want your audience to take away from you, especially, and this is very important, especially in a world where we have generally short attention spans. The average human attention span has been estimated to be roughly about 8 seconds. So we're not going to absorb everything, but think about what's kind of the one thing that we want our audience to take away from our presentation. Now, a good presentation, whether you use slides, whether you use other types of tools and aids, or whether you use nothing, is built off a good structure. And a good structure gives your presentation a flow. So you can see here, this is a structure example for an idea pitch. So you've got kind of a background, which is your beginning. You've got your middle, which is problem versus solution. So these are maybe some of the challenges that people have. This is our wonderful shiny new product. This is our wonderful shiny new service that we provide. And then you talk about conclusion, which is your ending. So it kind of works in kind of like a storybook fashion, which is the beginning, middle, and end. And all of this is kind of underpinned by doing your research, which is kind of this section, this preparation stage, planning, which we're also talking about here, and then designing, which we're going to be coming on to next as well. So we've kind of gone from delivering a presentation to telling a story to hopefully telling a story for your audience. So where possible, if we know who we are going to be presenting in front of, we want to make sure that we're kind of we're actually touching upon what kind of interests them as possible, and kind of maybe using things like analogies, like I mentioned with my science teacher earlier on, just to kind of help captivate and engage his kind of audience, which was us as the students there as well. So let's have a check-in, see if there's any sort of comments or any questions at this stage, which I can't see any questions at this stage. I know that Samantha's been eagerly kind of dropping in answers so far. So let's actually move on now to the design stage. So all about kind of building the presentation itself. So when it comes to presentation, what sort of tool are we going to be using? Are you going to be using slides? Are we going to be using other tools out there like a whiteboard, a flip chart? What are we going to be using? And what I want you to do is I want you to kind of, whenever you kind of sit down and get to this stage about designing, I want you to kind of always run it through these three boxes that you can see on screen. So whatever tool that you've got in mind, whether it be slides, whether it be flip chart, anything else, run it by, well, how many people are going to be in the audience? How many people are you going to be presenting it in front of? What is the message that you're trying to convey? And are you able to effectively get that message across using this specific presentation tool that you have in mind? And also think about kind of the tools and technology that's available at hand. So especially this kind of applies a lot, especially when it comes to presentations in person. So if you're presenting at a particular venue, do you have the right kind of connection so that you can connect your laptop up to the television screen or the projector? Does it have kind of a HDMI connection? Does your laptop have a HDMI connection? Do you have the right sort of adapter available? If not, going forward as well. So always run it by these three. And I always like to kind of call these three as like your filter when it comes to presentation tools in terms of deciding which one is going to be most appropriate for what you are going to be talking about as well. So for example, a good example here is to slide or not slide. Shall I use slideshow presentation tools or shall I not? So again, you want to kind of run it back and go through those three kind of filtering factors that we've just spoken about and decide whether slideshow presentation software is the right sort of tool for you going forward. Now, there are other aids and tools out there that you could consider. You've got the likes of Mural, which is a fantastic digital collaboration tool. You've got Canva. I know some of you mentioned earlier on when we talked about memorable presentations, you mentioned the likes of infographics and kind of visuals and pictures. That's where Canva is very useful. It's a fantastic graphic design tool that you can utilize. You've also got Slido. Slido is a great way of encouraging, as some of you mentioned as well, interactivity to engage your audience, so people can kind of ask questions, and then the presenter can then put some of those questions on screen, or just kind of look at some of the questions that come in anonymously, rather than kind of doing it kind of, I guess, the traditional way, which is asking people to kind of raise their hand, and then you go around and kind of selecting kind of who to kind of take the question from. And that's something which again is time consuming. Remember, we're on the clock as a presenter as well, so tools like Slido can come in really, really handy. You can also use things like Whiteboard, just with a board marker. flip charts as well with a pen. Or you can use nothing at all. Just use you on top of a stage, or you in front of a webcam. So that's something to consider in terms of some of the presentation tool options that are available out there. Now, the most kind of common presentation tool out there, which if I was to say to you, I want you to give me a presentation on this particular topic. Naturally, our mind automatically thinks, oh, right, I need to create a slideshow. That's our kind of default thinking. Now, if we are thinking about creating a slideshow presentation, there's a lot of slideshow presentation software tools out there at our disposal. So you've got the likes of Microsoft PowerPoint, which has been around for a number of years, so much so I guess it's become a verb, right? So let's PowerPoint it. So you kind of know, oh, we've got to create a slideshow presentation. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be off PowerPoint, it could be off other software as well, but that's become kind of a verb, I guess, over the years as well. You've also got the likes of Apple Keynote. You've also got the likes of Prezi. So Prezi is more of kind of an animation type of tool kind of software out there. So if, you would have kind of one big slide, and then if you click into a certain element of that main slide, or the presenter clicks into the one element of that main slide, you kind of deep dive into another slide, and then you go into another slide. And I've seen it used quite usefully in kind of creative industries. And if you check out the Prezi website on the homepage, I believe there's some good examples that you can actually see in terms of the samples of how these Prezi presentations generally tend to work as well. So yeah, apart from kind of Microsoft PowerPoint, Apple Keynote, you've got the likes of Prezi, and then you've also got Google Slides as well. And I just want to touch upon Google Slides for a moment. So Google Slides is available as part of the Google Workspace. And you can see some kind of useful benefits of Google Slides. One of the biggest benefits that I tend to find is that your work gets backed up automatically and quickly. So every time that you're making an adjustment, a change, or deleting something, or changing the font, or doing any kind of editing on a slideshow at all, it's saving automatically in the background to your Google Drive. So if you have any sort of episodes like I do now and then, whereby you forget to plug in your laptop charger, and then your laptop just completely goes blank because you forgot to plug in the charger, rest assured that whatever your last kind of edit that you made on that presentation was actually saved and kind of backed up for you as well. Now, another beauty of Google Slides is that you can collaborate together with other team members, and you can see that with this graphic here on screen. Multiple people can work on the same presentation at the same time, and you can see in real time what people are kind of editing and creating on the presentation itself as well. And the beauty of Google Slides is that it's available online, so you can access it anywhere in the world. So as long as you've got an internet connection, then you can jump onto slides.google.com, or you can open up kind of the Google Slides app on the mobile device, and hey presto, you'll have that presentation there at your disposal as well. Now, with the likes of Google Slides, as with other kind of slideshow presentation tools out there, you can create a theme whereby you can select certain kind of colors that maybe represent your organization or kind of charity as well. And that's something really useful. So it helps to kind of create a level of continuity throughout your slideshow presentation in general. There's also some good time-saving hacks with the likes of Google Slides. This is just one time-saving hack. So if you were looking to, you've created, I don't know, like a slideshow presentation with about 30 slides, and you want to edit the font of the header of all of those slides because you don't like it, then you can just edit the master slide. As this kind of short video clip shows. But if you jump onto YouTube, you'll probably find other time-saving hacks for the likes of Google Slides and other presentation software out there in general as well. And that's just something that is useful whenever you are kind of getting into the workflow of creating presentations in general as well. In terms of the navigation bar with Google Slides, you can kind of add things like text boxes, image, shapes, lines, change backgrounds and layouts as well, and also add in things known as transition. I'm sure some of you would have heard of transitions before. That's just how essentially one slide fades into another, whether it fades, whether it kind of bounces in, whether it kind of dissolves into another slide. You can set those kind of specific transitions going forward as well. And then you've got kind of the big present button. If you click the down arrow as well, there's also an option for you to present in kind of presenter view, which allows you, if you are presenting on one screen, you can actually have your notes. If you've got any notes written down for your slides, you can have that on another screen as well. So if you feel, oh, I might forget something, it's nice to kind of have that as kind of a little bit of an aid and a little bit of a kind of a comfort blanket for yourself on your kind of second screen when you are presenting, which is quite useful as well. Now, when it comes to the design phase of a presentation, it's important to make your title impactful, but you want it to be in line with what you are talking about. So this webinar session is titled Build Engaging Presentation, and that is exactly what we are discussing throughout the course of this session as well. So we want it to be kind of very kind of impactful and very much kind of exactly in line with what we are talking about. So something that I always kind of allude to when we talk about kind of presentation titles is that for those of you based in the UK, you might have kind of seen this kind of well-known kind of fence paint company. Their television advert, their kind of slogan for their organization is "It does what it says on the tin," and that's the way to kind of think about a presentation title. It needs to be short, snappy, but to the point, and also be in line with what you were talking about. It's better to actually, I always say it's better to undersell, sorry, but over deliver rather than the other way around. So that's something very, very important to kind of be aware of when it comes to creating presentation titles as well. Also try and use as little text as possible. This is something that, again, was alluded to by somebody earlier on when we kind of spoke about that question about memorable presentations. And this kind of goes in line with what we spoke about earlier on as well, about kind of that mindset that we, as the individual, the person who's presenting, are the presentation. What we have with us, so slides, whether it be anything else, any other tool, flip chart, whatever we have, that is just a visual tool, just a visual aid. Something to help kind of illustrate and kind of highlight certain points, as was mentioned earlier on as well. So you can see here with an example, you've got kind of a very long paragraph, and that's something which is not really visually appealing. Whereas you've just got kind of short bullet points, which you can then kind of go off on little tangents about as well. And that's something more easier on the eye. And then you can interlace that with the likes of kind of photos and videos as appropriate as well. So that's kind of a bit of a mindset kind of a thing to kind of be aware of is that we are the presentation, and just try and use a little text as possible on your visual aids, because that's what they are. They're just there as kind of visual aids and kind of guides, and kind of highlighting in terms of kind of highlighting certain points for you as well. Now, some top presentation tips. We'll speak about pacing coming up later when we speak about kind of presentation skills, but be considerate about the number of slides that we do use, if we decide to use slideshow presentation software at all, that is. Keep bullet points kind of concise as well. So again, if we are using bullet points, you don't want to create kind of a bullet point paragraph or anything like that. Think about our font as well. So there's some fantastic fonts out there. I'm sure you'll be able to kind of see and kind of experiment with. Especially kind of the nice kind of calligraphy style kind of joined up fonts. However, it's not going to be usually easy for an audience member to read. So you want to pick a font that is going to be easy to read for the audience member, and also for you when you're kind of referencing and kind of glancing over at your presentation tool that you've selected. You want to make sure that it's easy for you to read as well as your audience as well. Look to also vary up your content. We've already spoken about that with kind of photos and videos to help kind of keep that engagement level with our audience as well. Now, when it comes to online presentation, something which I'm sure many of us have been well versed in, especially over kind of the last couple of years or so, more so than ever. Let's think about screen sharing. So share with care, but don't overshare is my kind of motto. So if we are kind of going to be sharing our web browser and we've got a load of tabs open, be sure to either close down the tabs or just kind of put that into another window, which is not going to be shared at all. Same kind of applies if we've got kind of loads of bookmarks that we've got on our web browser on our toolbar, and we want to kind of hide them. Just kind of put all them into a separate folder and title them bookmarks, so nobody else can really see what those bookmarks are. And that just kind of cleans things up as well. And because you want to kind of think about the aesthetics for your audience as well. Think about kind of video for your participants. Are they going to have video on or not? If not, is there going to be kind of a live chat facility? So we've got the YouTube live chat, for example, for this session? If not, are people going to have the opportunity to kind of get on camera themselves? So that's kind of other considerations. Think about how easy it is to use certain kind of presentation, online presentation tools out there as well. And also think about the costs involved, whether you need to kind of pay, whether you need to improve your setup for presenting. Would you need to kind of invest in something like a microphone or better lighting, for example, as well? So let's have a check in, see if there's any sort of comments or questions at this stage. So let's have a look in terms of questions. I can't see any at this stage. If there are any questions, feel free to pop them into the live chat as we round off this session by looking at how we can boost our presentation skills and kind of not just boost, but build upon the presentation skills that we all have, because we all have presentation skills. It's all about just kind of developing those as we go along. So an important question that we want to just reflect upon, and it's not something that we have to kind of directly answer all the time, but it's something to reflect upon, is just reflect upon what kind of presenter will you be? Now, it seems quite sort of an abstract question, doesn't it? What kind of presenter am I going to be? And that's something which, for me, I always think can be molded. And it all depends on this variable, which is that you want to be thinking about how many people you're presenting to. So you want to be very adaptable. So, for example, the way that I would present online would be different to how I would present in person. And in terms of how I would present to a room full of 30 people would be different to how I would present to a room full of 100 people or 1,000 people as well. So we want to have that level of kind of flexibility and adaptability with our presentation style. But the one thing to always remember, whether we are presenting in person or whether you're presenting down kind of down the lens at our webcam, is that we want to ensure that we turn crowds into conversations. Because at the end of the day, whether it's 1,000 people that we're presenting to 100 people, or kind of just 10 donors that we're looking to kind of pitch to, then at the end of the day, they're still individuals. So we want to try and develop that kind of conversational tone and style as well. And something that really kind of helps develop that conversation style is to encourage audience participation. So it's great to kind of interact with audience members, ask them questions, go through answers that come through, and that kind of plays its role with things like kind of active listening and kind of acknowledging what other people kind of bring to the table in terms of their thoughts, ideas as well. If there's any questions that come through, be appreciative of those that come up. Follow up. If there's questions that you don't know the answer to, you can follow up on them. And this kind of applies more to kind of in-person sessions where you can say, oh, I don't know the answer yet, but what we'll do, let's have a chat at the end of this session and we can kind of discuss this in further detail. Now, the one thing I'd always say when it comes to audience participation is if you don't know the answer to a question, don't make the answer up. That is, for me, the surefirest way to lose trust and credibility in a presenter is by making the answer up, because the person who is going to be getting the answer, even if it's a made-up answer, they might be none the wiser, but there will probably be someone in the room or someone else on that video call who will actually know the correct answer, and they are the ones that are actually going to be losing trust in you as a presenter. And it's a very quick kind of flick of the switch that happens with that as well. So, if in doubt, say, look, it's nice. It's kind of quite refreshing at times to be open and honest and say, sorry, I don't really know the answer for that, but let's kind of have a chat about this later, or let me get back to you by email, whatever kind of medium that you want to kind of follow up on. It's great to kind of do that if possible going forward as well. Now, other kind of presentation kind of skills and kind of qualities to be aware of is try to avoid content overload. As we spoke about, kind of be considerate about number of slides if we are using slides, that is. Tailor our story to make sure it's relevant for our audience, as we spoke about kind of in a science teacher. Think about kind of analogies that you can think about ahead of time that you can then bring into your presentation to hopefully get your message across in general as well. Something which I found is a very useful presentation skill that a colleague of mine actually mentioned to me years ago was that if you get stuck and you're not really sure what to speak about when you get to a certain slide, just try and focus upon 3 key points that you want to talk about per slide. So 3 key things that you want to discuss on a particular slide, and that will be really useful, and that helps with timing as well. So you can see actually there's 3 key points that we're talking about with this slide, but there might be only 1 point on certain slides. There might be kind of more. There might be kind of 6 points that you want to mention on a slide, But if you get your 3 important things that you want to get across on the slide, then the other 2 points or the other 3 points, you can maybe skip because you don't necessarily have the time, but at least you're getting the key messaging across as well. And that is really useful when it comes to timing as a presenter as well. And something which is also useful and helpful as a presenter is to take a breath. That really helps with recalling what you are going to say next. So if you're not sure, take a breath. I know sometimes there's that kind of that misconception. You think, oh, if I take a bit of a pause and I don't say anything for a certain period of time, the audience might think, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, or are they a little bit flustered? Can I trust them? But a lot of the times the audience, it's fine to have a little bit of silence because for them, they're able to digest information in that kind of pause as well. They're able to take a bit of a breather themselves in their own mind as well. So it's natural and useful to actually take a pause where possible. Now, I'm not saying you take a pause for kind of 5 minutes in a presentation, because that's something that will kind of be a little bit of a cause for concern going forward as well. But just kind of a pause just to help to kind of collect your thoughts, and then you can kind of carry on with your presentation going forward as well. Now, one thing to note is that your voice is a powerful tool, and I'm sure that Mariah Carey would agree with that statement. And that's kind of underpinned by kind of a few factors with our voice. One of them is volume. So if we're talking about something that we're really excited about, we can kind of speak in a high volume, but we can also use volume to our advantage and kind of speak in a low volume. So you can say, right, okay, everyone, I'm going to be telling you a little bit of a story here. So I want you to kind of listen in. And when you lower your voice, people kind of they naturally kind of move the ear a little bit closer, kind of come a bit closer to you, even kind of virtually. They'll be like, oh, what are they saying? Let me turn the volume up. And that's something, a really useful way of engaging and getting people in, especially if we think that we're kind of losing some of our audience going forward as well. We've already spoken about kind of our presentation style and thinking about kind of adaptability to our audience. Think about tonality as well of our voice. So even with this webinar session, I could have easily gone through this session and spoken in a very monotonous kind of voice, very kind of robotic voice, which I'm sure would have lost most, if not all of you, with a very robotic voice, and it wouldn't be very engaging at all. So you want to switch up kind of your tonality, so you can kind of bring the tone up and then bring it down at times as well. And also think about pacing. Now, pacing is very important, especially when it comes to timing, as is kind of pauses as well. So pauses are great for kind of giving kind of effect sometimes as well, when we're looking to really kind of land a point and get our audience to really just think and kind of self-reflect upon something. But also think about kind of pausing in terms of, I need to pause here because I need to think, how long have I got left of this presentation? How long have I got left on the clock myself as well? So there might be kind of certain slides or certain kind of infographics that we can spend a lot of time on with our audience, but then there might be other slides which are maybe just kind of transitional slides that you just kind of click through, for example, just because they help with the flow of your presentation, and that's ones which we want to kind of use it when it comes to pacing, in terms of developing our pacing as well. And this is something that comes with time. I'm sure many of you out there might have had this sort of experience, because I've had this before, where when I wasn't as proficient as a public speaker, I know that I would typically kind of present, and maybe I'd have like 15 or 20 minutes to present, maybe for something like a job interview, but then I basically speak at a very, very fast pace, and I end up finishing in like 10 minutes because I'm very nervous as well. So that's something we want to kind of consider. Think about the pacing, think about how long we've got and how we can sort of time it accordingly as well. Now, another thing to consider is our body language when it comes to presentation skills. So think about kind of the non-verbals. What is it communicating without us even kind of opening our mouth in general? So different types of body language can communicate kind of different potential messages or kind of thoughts in general as well. So if I was to kind of go through this session with my arms folded and I wasn't really looking down at the webcam lens, I wasn't looking at any of you, and I'm just kind of just looking around the room, I just kind of seem either a little bit sad, maybe I seem a little bit nervous, or I'm constantly looking at the slides because I'm trying to sort of read off it and I'm losing all of you through that as well. Maybe because I'm looking around the room, I may kind of come across a little bit kind of untrustworthy perhaps as well. So think about kind of the non-verbal side of things as well. What is your body language communicating? Now, even when you are on kind of a webcam, you still get kind of this kind of shot that is visible. So think about kind of having your think about how your arms are kind of used as well, and kind of how your posture is as well. You know, having kind of your shoulders pinned back, it kind of shows a bit more that you're kind of confident, as opposed to kind of a little bit more kind of hunched over as well, which kind of may kind of indicate that you're nervous, even though you're not as well. So always kind of be mindful about kind of your body language and what it's communicating as well. Now, something that really helps with body language and what can actually trick your mind, and I've done this myself and it actually has worked, is power poses. Now, you've got a couple of examples of some of those poses. You've got the Wonder Woman pose, you've got the performer pose as well. And this is something which, if you are a little bit kind of anxious and nervous before a big kind of presentation, you can just kind of do a power pose, which kind of tricks your mind into thinking that you are more confident than you actually are as well. And it's something which I've used to great effect. I'll kind of go somewhere which is a little bit quieter, so maybe kind of the bathroom. I'll do something like the Wonder Woman pose, and then I'm like, right, yeah, I'm ready to go. Let me go up on stage. And I'm a bit more kind of confident, a bit more kind of with it there as well, rather than kind of letting nerves get over me. Because if you let kind of nerves get over you, that's where you think about something like kind of pacing, your volume. You might not be able to kind of adapt that, and you might kind of start losing your audience going forward as well, in terms of kind of engagement and being effective as a presenter as well. That will start to kind of diminish. So something as simple as power poses can be very, very useful in that respect as well. And there's a fantastic TED Talk which you can check out, which I'm sure that Samantha will drop into the chat for you as well, in that respect, as in terms of power poses as well. Now, a few final things to be mindful of when it comes to body language is think about your stance. Now, this generally kind of applies more for in-person sessions. So think about if you've got kind of an open stance, it's great. It kind of shows that you are kind of confident in what you're talking about and confident as a speaker as well. Think about your movement as well. So I know that when I first started kind of presenting on a regular basis, I was probably using both of my hands a bit too much. Then I decided, right, let me just have one hand in my pocket, so I'm a little bit more casual as well. But then I'm able to just illustrate certain points using one hand as opposed to both hands, which kind of seems a little bit crazy, or kind of everything everywhere in general with hand gestures as well. So that's something to think about. Think about your movement as well, even how you kind of walk from one side of the stage to the other. Sometimes think about how you kind of walk across there as well, and also think about connecting. Very, very important point when it comes to presenting. Whether it be online, whether it be in person, think about the best way that you can connect with an audience member. And the best way that you can connect with an audience member is with eye contact. Now, that's not to say that you stare at your audience, or that you stare down the webcam constantly throughout the whole course of your presentation, but just kind of look for a few seconds and kind of talk to kind of an audience member, and then kind of look away, and then kind of look at another audience member. And that's a great way of kind of engaging your whole audience going forward as well. And the final kind of tip to kind of mention when it comes to the presentations goes practice, practice, practice. Now, for me, I always like the phrase, practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but practice makes progress. So I think that's kind of the concept and the mindset that I kind of generally tend to adopt, especially when it comes to presenting and kind of public speaking in general as well. So just to kind of round off on what we've spoken about kind of adaptability to our audience, and that comes from our presentation style. Think about our voice. So think about things like tonality, the pacing of how we kind of go kind of a little bit quicker at certain points, and then slow down to kind of have other points that kind of land and kind of stick with an audience as well. Think about our non-verbals, think about our body language, what is it communicating, and always practice, practice, practice in terms of our presentation as well. So let's have a check-in with questions. So let's have a look. So we've got some that have come through. So Kara's mentioned, any tips on successfully presenting to hybrid audiences where the presentation is for in-person attendees and to a live and an online audience? Yeah, I think with that, Kara, I'd probably say interactivity is probably going to be your friend, and that's something which is going to be useful for both an in-person audience and an online kind of virtual audience. So something like Slido works really well. You can kind of ask questions, you can run things like polls, and that kind of makes the virtual audience feel like they're involved as well, even if they're kind of missing out on kind of the in-person kind of session as well, because there'll be a lot of kind of non-verbal body language that you will, as a presenter, will be kind of exuding in person, which obviously the virtual attendees only get sample because they're seeing it through a screen. So something like interactivity, some of the tools that we mentioned, like Slido, might be kind of useful to kind of help kind of bridge that kind of hybrid audience gap there as well. So thanks very much for that question. So let's have a look at another question. Ananya has mentioned, do you have any top tips for introvert presenters to engage with audiences, stay confident? Yeah, I mean, for me, I know years ago I used to be quite sort of introvert, and I really, if somebody said public speaking, do you want to do a presentation, I'd be walking in the other direction. And for me, the only kind of solution that I found is to practice. So this could be something as simple as getting your smartphone out, hitting record, and just presenting down the lens to your smartphone, or presenting in front of your webcam. And then if you feel confident, present in front of somebody who you're quite sort of close to, so maybe like a family member or a friend, so that they can maybe give you a little bit of a critique as well. And then you slowly develop. And as you're developing, you're also practicing as well. So you are making progress as well. So thanks very much for that as well. And final question that I'm going to that I've got time for is one from Anne, who's mentioned, if you can give some more points regarding how to present confidently and how to reduce fear of public speaking when engaged with the audience. Yeah, so just kind of going upon Ananya's question in terms of what I was saying about kind of practicing as much as possible. I think it's useful the more that you do it, the better you'll kind of feel. You'll feel very nervous and anxious, but especially kind of one of the tips that I mentioned earlier on about try to remember up to 3 things to say per slide, and then you can move on. That really kind of helps with timing as well. So thanks very much for the question. Apologies if I'm not had a chance to get around to you all in this time. So in terms of the next steps, definitely check out the Google Career Certificates, especially if you are based in the UK. I'm sure that Samantha will pop a link into the chat for you once again as well. So hope that you found the session useful. If you did, both myself and Samantha would appreciate a little bit of feedback. We've got a feedback form link here on screen. Feel free to also share your experience on how you found the session if you wish to do so on social media. And we've got a hashtag for social media, which is hashtag Digital Garage for us as well. So be sure to check out the Google Digital Garage, sign up for more sessions, check out some of the online courses. Remember, it's Fundamental of Digital Marketing course, which is a course that will give you a certificate at no charge from Google once you've completed the course, that course as well. So apart from that, I want to say a massive thank you to our webinar partner, Media Trust. I also want to say a massive thank you to Samantha, who I'm sure has been a wonderful chat moderator. So feel free to show your appreciation down below for Samantha. And thank you all for tuning into this Google Digital Garage webinar session. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you. Bye.